David, thanks. Well, a proposal is now circling among Republican lawmakers at the state capitol, which would pave the way for autonomous or self-driving vehicles in Wisconsin.
Those vehicles are already on the road in a number of other states, and those in favor of changing the law here say it would impact everything from commerce to those who can't drive because of disabilities. New attend the debate over this technology and the impact it could have on other drivers sharing the road.
While most drivers in Appleton have heard of autonomous vehicles, many have mixed feelings about them showing up in Wisconsin if state lawmakers change the rules.
You know, I see certain things you see on the news, people, having all kinds of incidents. And, of course, people try to use it for, like, when they're tired and fatigued and all that kind of stuff. And me personally, I don't really like it, but, teach his own.
The GOP bill aims to create an autonomous driving safety board and a permitting process for companies to register hands-free vehicles. And owners would be required to provide proof of financial responsibility and information for emergency services personnel on how to interact with the vehicle should something go wrong. Opponents have pointed to incidents, including one by Wamos in San Francisco recently, when the cars were immobilized during a blackout, causing a traffic jam.
Wamos are all trapped here.
When these incidents happen, you can guarantee these corporations are going to address that so it doesn't happen again. They're going to be addressed before they come here to the state of Wisconsin.
However, the bill would prevent approval of autonomous vehicles for interstate highways, leaving that up to the federal government to decide.
One of the biggest trucking industries is right near Green Bay, which is Schneider. And so I think it's really important to allow logistic companies to be able to use this autonomous technology on the interstate. And as you know, Tesla is very close to adopting an autonomous truck for long hauls.
There's also concerns over how the vehicles will react to Wisconsin's winter weather, including ice and snow.
And I would say in cold weather, to answer that, no. Absolutely. Like I said, with the ice and, all that kind of stuff, the sleet, hail, all that stuff, it's not good. Like I said, I'm a truck driver, so me personally, if it was up to me, absolutely not.
As it is now, the bill won't be a solution for people who drink alcohol, as it establishes a lower threshold of 0.02 for people riding in those vehicles. Right now, the legislation is still in the early stages of seeking out sponsors.